My sister and I were both third-class maids in the Duke's grand estate. One day, she suddenly gave me a massive pearl, as big as a long.
The very next day, a priceless South Sea pearl went missing from the young Duke's imperially bestowed peacock coat, and the entire estate was turned upside down searching for it.
My older sister has one, she said timidly.
It doesn't look like something a maid should have. And just like that, I was beaten to death. But when I opened my eyes again, I was back in the slave trader's courtyard.
Madame Jo from the Duke's estate was there, picking out new young maids.
As the saying goes, slave traffickers are the cruelest monsters on earth. They deserve to hang, even if they claim innocence. And our trafficker, Mother Zheng, was exactly that kind of ruthless devil. My sister and I were just begging on the streets.
But with one heavy blow from Mother Zheng's club, we instantly became her merchandise.
I once watched a girl who tried to escape suffer a horrific fate. She died right there on the spot. Yet Mother Zheng just stood there, muttering and complaining, upset only because the girl's blood had ruined the clothes and delayed her from meeting buyers. Every girl in the courtyard was scared out of their mind, shaking and paralyzed with absolute terror. Forcing myself to stand, I managed to say, "Mother Zheng, let me wash those clothes for you.
The sun is hot today, so they'll dry in no time. You won't be delayed at all."
She scoffed, "You two disobedient girls. I originally planned to sell you to the coal mines, to be the lowest of the low, just to teach you a lesson. But since you actually have some brains, I'll keep you around for chores for now." And so, my sister and I survived Mother Zheng's wrath.
That coal mine was a cold, suffocating hell. The girls who went there, once as bright as spring flowers, withered away and died in that pitch-black darkness in less than a month.
Vanished without a trace. I couldn't let that happen to me. And I couldn't let my sister go there either. My sister clutched my sleeve, trembling with fear. I had sworn to protect her, no matter what.
So when the brothel madams came looking for girls, along with the brokers buying young concubines, and Madame Jo from the Duke's estate, I knew this was our only chance.
I did absolutely everything in my power, ignoring Mother Zheng's dagger-like glares. I flattered and pleased Madame Jo as much as I could,
desperately trying to make her choose me.
and buy my sister along with me. And don't be fooled by her timid look, I told Madame Jo. She's incredibly obedient. She will do absolutely anything you command, madam.
I was so incredibly naive.
My sister and I both became third-class maidservants at the Duke's manor.
I was in charge of tending the kitchen fire,
while she was responsible for sweeping the courtyard.
The work wasn't exactly light,
but it wasn't unbearably heavy either, compared to the days when our family was destroyed and we were left homeless on the streets.
Having a shelter where we could eat our fill and stay warm is more than enough to keep me content.
But my sister, whose childhood name was Yanfeng, complained constantly. Our village teacher had once told her she was destined for great fortune
and would one day become the mistress of a wealthy household. Because of that, she despised doing menial chores.
Covered in dust and grime from sweeping every day,
she would grumble, "What kind of future is there in this?" Later, the manor released a group of senior maids.
They were going to promote some third-class maids to second class to serve the masters in the inner courtyard. And the head housekeeper chose me. My sister's eyes went red with rage. Why didn't that old hag choose me? My dear sister, please, let me have this spot. The decision was made by our superiors. Even if I wanted to give it to you, I can't.
But I made a pinky promise, swearing that I would find a way to bring her into the inner courtyard the moment I got the chance.
Sister Yan will never leave you behind. A few days later, there was a grand celebration in the Duke's manor, and the servants were rewarded with plenty of silver, gold, and jewelry. My sister came running to me, beaming with joy, holding a massive pearl. Sister, the young master gave me this. Keep it safe for me.
The pearl was as large as a longan fruit, glowing with a beautiful, lustrous sheen.
It didn't look like some ordinary trinket handed out casually, but my sister insisted. The young master is always generous to the lower maids. He's incredibly open-handed. He wouldn't care about a little thing like this. Seeing your sweet, innocent face,
I smiled and put it away.
I'll save this for your dowry, I teased. But the very next day, a southern pearl was found missing from the young master's imperial peacock feather coat. He was about to wear that exact coat to the imperial palace to audition the emperor. The entire manor was in a frantic panic. No matter where they searched, it was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, my sister spoke up timidly.
My sister has one.
She even showed it off to me last night. It really didn't look like something a second-class maid should have. Sure enough, they searched my things and found the southern pearl in my box, the exact one my sister had given me. Before I could even utter a word of defense, the old matrons had already gagged me with a cloth. You wicked, filthy servant. Beat her to death with clubs to clean this place up. Before I drew my last breath, my cousin collapsed to the floor, sobbing hysterically. Madam, my sister has committed such a shameful act. I am a well-mannered servant, and I won't beg for her mercy.
But after all, she is still my cousin.
I beg you, madam, please grant her a cheap coffin. so she can go to her grave with a shred of dignity. The madam thought my cousin was loyal and honest, so she promoted her to a second class, let her serve in the young master's courtyard. Her scheme had cost me my life, and she finally got what she wanted. But when I woke up, reborn, a rooster's crow echoed, accompanied by Auntie Zheng's grating, screeching voice. Good up, girls. Wash your faces and do your hair. We have some big buyers coming today, so make sure you don't embarrass me. With no time to process what was happening, I got out of bed mechanically. I filled a basin with washing water and brought it to Auntie Zheng's room, then emptied her chamber pot and carried out a tray of trash. The trash was full of pomegranate peels. Hoarding them like precious treasure, I secretly hid them away. Once we finished doing our hair and makeup, the buyers arrived. Sure enough, it was those same 3 buyers. The broker who bought cheap wives, a madam who purchased Yan Zhou slender horses, and Matron Zhou, who bought young maids for the Duke's mansion. The first 2 buyers offered the most money, since the girls they bought would end up in the red light district. They offered 10 taels of silver for each girl, so Auntie Zheng let them have the first pick. The Duke's mansion, on the other hand, was only buying low-level maids for dirty work and offered the lowest price, 1 tael of silver for 2 girls. I used the juice squeezed from the pomegranate peels to dye my face. It turned my skin a sallow, sickly yellow, and as soon as the broker and the madam saw me, they lost all interest. My cousin, Yan Feng, had ordinary looks, so they weren't interested in her either. Matron Zhou just stood there with her hands tucked in her sleeves, observing us quietly, without saying a word. The sun was gradually sinking in the west, more than half of the girls in the courtyard already gone. I take a deep breath and step forward with a forced smile. Madam Zhou.
My maid is Huang Ying'er.
I have studied under a scholar since I was a child. I can read and write, and I also know a thing or two about herbal medicine. For just 1 tael of silver, you won't regret buying me. Auntie Zheng immediately grits her teeth and glares at me. In front of her, I had always acted dull and slow, doing only hard labor without saying a single word. I am a completely different person today. I fold her. Madame Zhao's interest is piqued. The sky is dark. The earth is yellow. The universe is vast and wild.
I recite a passage of the 1,000-character classic,
And then write it down in the dirt with a wooden twig. Madame Zhou smiles. What a bright and clever girl.
Though her looks are plain,
the Duke's estate can employ her with peace of mind. She buys me. My younger sister, Huang Ying'er, starts to panic.
She tugs hard at my sleeve. Sister.
Grandpa and Grandma told you to take care of me before they died.
I glance at her. She is so small, yet her sharp chin already hints at a cunning nature, and her eyes are far too restless. It makes her look cheap and untrustworthy. I hide my utter disgust. I plead with Madame Zhou. My sister is still young, and our grandparents entrusted her to me on their deathbed. Madam, if you could just find her any small chore, I would be eternally grateful. This time, I am not praising her. I am doing this solely for my own reputation. Any girl who wasn't chosen by the other families is buy one, get one free. You are a good, filial girl. My sister's face lights up with joy. She shoves me aside and walks straight up to kowtow to Madame Zhou. I quietly step back. Yan Feng, your sister will definitely keep her promise and never separate from you. But without your miserable life, how else can I show the world how loving and devoted I am? Your big sister really suffered so much pain in her past life. I'm taking Yan Feng with me. And there's another reason. She and I grew up together in Fuajia village. My grandfather was the village chief. Our family was actually quite well off. My father was the best hunter in the village, and my mother was the daughter of a scholar. They only had my brother and me, and they absolutely doted on us. But when my brother turned 15, he joined the army. He never came back after that.
Yan Feng was my second uncle's daughter.
As the saying goes, the youngest child is always the grandparent's favorite. Second uncle was my grandparents' absolute pride and joy, and naturally, they showered that same love onto his only daughter, Yan Feng. She was raised right by their side. Whenever she saw the velvet flowers and silver hairpin my mother bought me, or the little wooden puppet my brother carved, Yan Feng would demand them for herself. But second uncle never worked the fields or did any hard labor, so he had absolutely no money to buy her anything. So, Yan Feng would act spoiled and whine, crying and making a huge scene. My grandparents would always snatch my things away and hand them right to her. When I cried, grandmother would just grab my arm tightly, her voice full of impatience. How did your parents raise such a crybaby? Your cousin is younger than you. As the older sister, you're supposed to yield to her. How can you be so selfish and fight with her? She dragged me out to the front gate and slammed the courtyard door shut, locking me out. I was only 4 or 5 years old back then, standing at an unfamiliar alley entrance, crying my eyes out. As it started getting dark, thankfully, a neighbor passing by spotted me and took me back home. From that day on, my parents never let me set foot in my grandparents' courtyard again, and my relationship with Yan Feng slowly drifted apart. But this spring, the harvest was terrible. Our grain bins slowly emptied out until we had nothing left. I carried my basket up the mountain to pick some elm seeds. If you steam them, you can make them into little balls, which are actually pretty good for filling an empty stomach. That way, my parents wouldn't have to worry about finding food for me. Just as I reached halfway up the mountain, Huzi, a boy from our village, came running toward me in a panic, calling my name.
Your brother sent a letter.
I heard your big brother has over 100 men under him now. He looks so impressive.
I've wanted to become a great general for 3 years now. 2.
It's been 3 years since my brother joined the army, and this is his very first letter back.
My heart leaped with joy.
I wasted no time and sprinted straight back home.
But Huzi accidentally fell into a rabbit trap.
We were deep in the mountains, and it was already getting dark. I had to stop and rescue him first. But that delay. By the time we made it down the mountain, everything had changed. Our little village, nestled by the mountains and river, was completely swallowed by raging flames. The fire roared like a beast, devouring the bodies of our fellow villagers. The sizzling sound of burning flesh felt like a knife carving into my heart. Tears streamed down my face as I screamed out, "Father! Mother!" The family courtyard was engulfed in flames. My father and mother's bodies were charred red, their bodies riddled with arrows. They lay motionless beneath the fallen beams, trapped in a sea of fire. The flames slowly swallowed them whole. I tried to rush in like a madman, but Huzi held me back with all his strength, refusing to let me throw myself into the fire. His own parents lay dead at the entrance of the village, both pierced straight through the heart by a single blade.
Huzi pulled the sword out with all his might.
The blade was cold, sharp, and gleaming. It was engraved with a matching floral pattern. These bandits, they weren't ordinary.
They clearly belonged to some organized group, not just some random common outlaws.
Huzi's eyes flared with pure rage and grief.
Ying'er, don't go.
Let's go find your big brother.
I'll join the army too. We'll come back and get our revenge. I wept uncontrollably,
Every drop of blood in my body rushing to my chest.
my eyes felt like they were going to burst right out of my skull.
Why did they have to slaughter my entire family?
I want revenge. I will have my revenge.
I don't know how long we cried, until both Huzi and I had absolutely no strength left. We slumped onto the ground. Just then, a head peeked out from the water jar in the courtyard.
A head popped out of the water, and it was my cousin, Yanfeng. She stumbled and collapsed into my arms, sobbing.
Sister, our home is gone.
Grandpa and Grandma are dead. Mom and Dad are dead too.
I only have you left.
Sister, Grandpa, Grandma, and Uncle, my aunt stuffed me inside the water jar and told me to wait for you so we could escape together.
I held her tight in my arms,
Thinking back my tears, unable to say a word. No matter what grudges we held against each other when we were kids,
now that our family is destroyed and gone.
we two sisters must lean on each other to survive.
The bandit leader hurriedly questioned Yanfeng.
Did you hear what was in your oldest brother's letter?
Do you know where he is?
When the bandits raided the mountain, Grandpa and Grandma were holding Yanfeng, listening to my mother read my brother's letter.
Yanfeng was shivering uncontrollably.
Clutching a jade pendant tightly to her chest.
I don't know.
I don't know anything.
Sister, I feel so terrible. I used to think she was genuinely suffering, never expecting that she had deliberately hidden our brother's letter. It even stole the jade pendant, the keepsake my brother had sent to me.
Ever since she got her hands on that jade pendant,
She kept it hidden away, and never let me see it a second time.
whenever I asked about it, she would just cry and stammer.
This is the heirloom Grandma left to me.
An heirloom? Then why is the character Yang carved right on it?
When I was born,
A little yellow bird landed among the pomegranate blossoms.
Chirping so sweetly.
My mother was going through a difficult labor,
but hearing that clear, beautiful song,
she found the strength to bring me into the world.
She named me Ying'er.
Yanfeng was illiterate.
So she didn't know the jade pendant already had my name engraved on it. I brought her with me when I entered the Duke's estate, quietly to search for any news of our brother,
and to take back what is rightfully mine.
安也交报燕放给你。
along with another girl with an oval face.
但依让后约是比人夫妻当多。
Yurong was beautiful, but she was cold and arrogant. She rarely deigned to speak to us. Upon entering the estate,
Nanny Joe led us into the Duke's mansion.
listen up, girls. In our Duke's mansion, rules are everything.
Even though you're just starting out as low-ranking maids,
If you learn the rules well, you won't have to worry about missing out on opportunities.
you can eventually rise to third class, second class, and first class maids. If you're blessed with even greater fortune, you might serve the dowager, or the madam, or even the young master and young mistresses. Work hard, and you'll have a bright future. Nan Qing, who serves the dowager,
And Xiu, who serves the young master.
both started out as lowly maids just like you before they got promoted.
Now, they live like wealthy ladies in this mansion.
And when it comes to status,
They are far more noble than the mistresses of ordinary, low-class families outside.
each of the three of us received our chores. I was put in charge of stoking the kitchen fire, while my sister was responsible for sweeping the courtyard.
Yulong was beautiful.
So she was given the task of delivering things to the inner courtyard.
Yafan sat, sounding rather envious.
Who does she think she is? Putting on the airs of a high-born lady.
We're all just servants here, no different from each other.
What's so great about the inner courtyard anyway?
I can get in there too?
The other supervising nannies also brought back a bunch of young maids, supposedly costing 1 tael of silver each.
Only then did I realize
Nanny Joe had pocketed half of our purchase money. Feeling guilty, she gave the 3 of us extra clothes and bedding. Though made of coarse fabric, they were thicker and warmer than what the others got.
I suppose she could be considered a rare, decent person in her own way.
She didn't easily trample on us just because she held our lives in her hands.
And she still had a shred of conscience left.
Among those girls, there was one who was exceptionally beautiful. She was tall and slender,
And with a quick, bright glance of her luminous eyes,
she looked just like a heavenly fairy from a painting.
all the nannies favored her, saying she would surely become a concubine in the future. Both she and Yurong were sent to work in the inner courtyard. But before we even had the chance to learn her name, she was gone.
Drawing held her chin high with pride.
Sister Siu had ordered her to carry a tray, but her clumsy hands ended up breaking an imperial Rui scepter, a lowly servant. Even 100 of her lives aren't worth a single jade Rui. Lately, Yurong seems to have forgotten that she is no longer the young mistress of the Guan family.
She too has become a lowly maid, not even worth 1%.
No, not even a tenth of that.
Working by the kitchen stove is a grueling chore.
My face is covered in pitch black soot every single day. Others steer clear of me, avoiding me like the plague. But to me, it is a blessing in disguise.
With this layer of soot,
I no longer have to struggle so hard to hide my naturally fair skin.
Before she passed, Mother always told me that a girl who is too beautiful cannot protect herself in a world like this. I have known of my own beauty since I was a child.
The outer courtyard is a chaotic place, teeming with all kinds of people. Guards, servants, and stewards come and go. An endless stream of people passing through. Wherever the men's heavy boots tread, crude jests and vulgar teasing always follow. My roommate, Yurong, is blessed with beautiful features.
She spends all her monthly allowance on rouge and powder, constantly painting her eyes and drawing her brows.
She has become the prized beauty of the outer courtyard.
The way the men look at her is utterly disrespectful, filled with lust.
I quietly warned her about it, but she only squinted at me and sneered. A girl from a backwater village is just so petty and narrow-minded.
When my family was prominent, what did any of this matter?
You are nearly as open-minded as your sister. My sister, Yanfeng, was preening in front of the mirror, playing with her rouge. She smeared her cheeks until they looked like a monkey's bright red backside, and chimed in to support Yurong. Everyone says a girl changes as she grows up, but you just get darker and uglier. Don't be jealous of Sister Yurong.
I did not try to reason with her with heartfelt advice like I did in my past life.
I simply offered a faint, indifferent smile and quietly walked away. In my past life, I risked everything to protect her.
Yet, to climb the social ladder and cling to the powerful,
She ruthlessly pushed me into the depths of hell.
in this life, I only want to protect myself, find my long-lost brother,
And avenge her. That deep, bitter blood feud. Once my chores at the stove were done, I proactively went to help the head steward, Nanny Zhao, every single day. She is old and has failing eyesight, unable to read the characters on the tallies. So, I read them out to her, line by line, and transcribed the important matters into large, clear handwriting
to make it easy for him to review.
Nanny Zhao was greedy and loved her liquor. She also had a son, a total drunkard and womanizer, who lived in the outer courtyard. I knew something would happen sooner or later.
Sure enough, that night, her son got dead drunk.
Right before he ran into Yurong and Yafen, who were swaying their hips near the wall,
I pulled Yanfeng away just in time.
leaving only Yurong to suffer his brutal attack.
She was beaten to death by the drunkard. This was why I stood by and washed up Manny Zhao's room,
Checking the accounts while locking the door. This was the safest place in the entire outer courtyard. Nobody would ever suspect that someone was hiding in the drunkard's mother's room.
First, shouting and screaming echoed outside.
But before long, everything went dead silent. I peered through the paper window.
And so Enfeng knocking the drunkard unconscious with a brick.
He was shaking all over, about to run, but Yurong grabbed her sleeve tightly, crying, You killed him?
If the masters investigate, I won't take the fall for this.
Yanfen's eyes widened in shock.
Which instantly turned into pure malice.
She quietly picked up the brick again
And smashed it hard against Yurong's head. The blow was swift and precise.
Ryom lapsed to the ground.
Yanfeng tore open her collar,
Exposing her bright red camisole, then shoved the brick into her hand. She spat coldly. Don't blame me for being cruel. If you didn't act like a cheap seductress all day, how could you attract these filthy flies?
and you wanted me to take the blame?
Pa!
The drunkard and Yurong lay in a pool of blood, their clothes and sashes tangled together, making it impossible to tell whose blood was whose. Yanfeng crept along the foot of the wall,
Slipping away like a startled rat.
By the next day, Yurong was gone.
The life of a scullery maid is worth nothing,
Whether she died or was sold off, it was like throwing a stone into water,
without causing even a single ripple.
Even Yanfeng, who had personally sent Yurong to her grave,
Looked completely calm and unbothered.
like nothing had ever happened. Because of her son's scandalous behavior, Nanny Zhao was banished to the countryside estate by our masters. The new outer courtyard manager taking her place was Nanny Zhou, the very same woman who had bought us in the first place. While flipping through the account books, Nanny Zhou noticed the elegant, dignified handwriting I had transcribed for Nanny Zhou. She remembered me instantly.
I knew it was you, clever girl. Just like that, I was promoted to a third-class maid, working right by her side to manage the ledgers. No longer forced to do heavy chores.
My skin grew fairer and softer by the day. On top of that, I was given Oolong's former task of delivering verification tokens to the inner courtyard.
Yang Fo, on the other hand, was as lazy and conniving as ever, without me there to cover for her.
The courtyard she was responsible for was always a complete mess.
But she was a master of sweet-talking. She had the masters wrapped around her little finger,
And even sweet-talked the head kitchen manager into becoming her godmother.
by handing over half of her monthly allowance. She managed to worm her way into becoming a third-class maid as well. But despite all her scheming,
She couldn't even touch the threshold of the inner courtyard.
when I put on the green vest and tea-brown skirt of a third-class maid, a sudden wave of days washed over me.
In my past life, it was in these exact clothes
That I was falsely accused of stealing the South Sea Pearl from the Golden Sphere ornament.
And Madame ordered me to be beaten to death.
The agony of those clubs raining down on my body.
Flesh tearing, bones shattering,
was just like Aunt Cheng's little hammer.
crushing my bones inch by inch, and destroying my very last hope for family. But Yan Feng was completely oblivious.
She snatched the mirror, turning this way and that to admire her double bun hairstyle.
She ordered me around like I was her servant. I have to hurry to the main kitchen.
Pack up my things for me. Starting tomorrow, we're moving into the third-class quarters.
Oh, and make sure you empty my chamber pot too.
With that, she slipped away in a flash.
I locked the door.
Using the opportunity to search for my brother's letters. And the jade pendant.
The pendant was pure, snow-white jade,
Exquisite, translucent quality.
with the cursive character Yang carved on it. It was the only keepsake my brother had left me, and my only clue to finding him. But on the bed,
Inside the chests.
behind the curtains, I searched every single corner.
But there was absolutely nothing. I knew Yanfeng. She would never just lose something so valuable. She must have hidden it somewhere.
Once we became third-class maids,
Our monthly allowance went up to 1 tael of silver. Yang Feng gave half to her godmother.
and spent all of the rest on makeup, powders, and fancy jewelry. After a few months, she didn't have a single penny saved.
As for me, although I also gave half of my wage to Nanny Joe to show my respect,
I saved every single bit of what was left. Staring at my bulging purse,
Yan Feng's greedy mind started plotting again.
"Sister, I've caught a terrible cold. My head hurts so much.
Godmother says the estate doesn't hire doctors for third-class maids like us.
We have to buy our own medicine. And to bring it into the estate, I even have to bribe the gatekeeper.
It will cost 5 taels of silver." Seeing my hesitation,
She started wiping her tears, bringing up our deceased grandparents, and crying hysterically, threatening to end her life. I let out a feigned sigh, pulled out 3 tiles of silver, and handed them to her.
these 3 tiles were brand new silver coins, bright white as snow, given to me as a reward by the old madam's head maid, Nan Qing, when I went to the inner courtyard to deliver the tally.
No one in the outer courtyard had ever received anything like them. The next day, Nanny Joe announced that the estate was hosting a banquet and wanted to select a few maids from the outer courtyard to serve tea in the inner courtyard.
Duanfo immediately raised her hand.
Her face full of eagerness.
I leaned in and whispered in Nanny Joe's ear.
That Yang Feng was sick.
She just spent 3 tiles of silver on medicine last night.
Nanny Joe immediately frowned. What kind of medicine costs 3 taels of silver?
How does a low-ranking maid get such a rich person's illness?
She's sick and still wants to join in?
If she passes her illness to the nobility, our entire courtyard will be punished.
Because of this, Yang Feng was disqualified.
She came to confront me, absolutely furious. I coaxed her again, telling her that Nanny Wu from the inner courtyard was the madam's personal dowry servant,
And that in a few days, she would personally select maids to serve by the madam's side.
that's way better than just serving tea.
Yao Feng's face lit up instantly.
She grabbed my arm, shaking it back and forth.
Returning to her usual playful, innocent act,
She had no idea that Nanny Wu's nickname was Ku 3 Tals.
meaning the absolute minimum bribe she accepted was 3 taels of silver.
On top of that, everything she did was dirty, underhanded business. In the end, anyone who tried to buy their way in through her met a miserable fate. In my past life, when Nanny Wu's schemes were finally exposed, her entire family was executed. Even the young maids who had used her connections died one by one, each more brutally than the last. This time, I'm going to pit Yafeng and Nanny Wu against each other like rabid dogs. Ideally, it will force her to reveal exactly where the jade pendant is hidden. When the first light snow began to fall, I accompanied Nanny Joe to report the outer courtyard's expenses to the madame. In previous years, the stewards were always vague and evasive with the accounts, but I listed every single expense clearly on paper, noting the exact date for each item,
the particulars, and the amounts. I had even wrapped the ledger in oiled paper to protect it from the snow.
The madam was extremely pleased with what she saw. Even Nanny Moo, who was standing nearby, looked at me with newfound interest. As soon as we stepped out of the main hall, Nanny Joe went to report to the dowager, leaving me to make my own way back. I immediately turned around to find Nanny Wu, and sure enough, she was waiting for me under the veranda. She pulled out 2 ledgers and asked me to help her find where the figures didn't match. Of these 2 ledgers,
One was real, and the other was a fake used to doctor the books. Nanny Wu had been embezzling the madame's personal funds to support her worthless son, who spent all his time drinking, gambling, and visiting brothels. These two ledgers were the absolute proof of her crimes.
I shook my head repeatedly,
Pretending to be nervous and anxious, and said, "Nanny,
I don't really understand these things.
it's all thanks to my cousin, Yafo. She is incredibly sharp. But she's quiet and honest, and she doesn't really like to show her face too much. An honest girl who doesn't like to show her face in public?
That meant even if she subtly vanished, no one would ever notice."
Nanny Wu mulled over those words, and a devious plan slowly began to form in her eyes. Her attitude toward me instantly turned cold. "Off you go then, and keep this to yourself. Otherwise, you'll learn exactly what happens to those who run their mouths." A few days later, Nanny Wu indeed came to the outer courtyard to recruit someone.
Yanfeng made sure to present herself with poise and confidence.
I took the opportunity to chime in. "This is my clever and honest cousin." Nanny Wu looked highly pleased
And took Yanfeng to the inner courtyard for red date tea.
Yanfeng was so thrilled her face flushed bright red. He was walking on air
And even gave me a hard pinch, asking if this was actually real.
and completely forgot his manners. And fawned over Nanny Wu like a little lapdog. He secretly slipped her a purse containing 3 tiles of silver as a little bribe.
Manto sighed with pity for me. Yeah.
You excel in everything you do.
Even Madame praised your cleverness yesterday. How on earth could Nanny Wu be so blind as to choose that useless sister of yours? My sister's tongue could turn black into white, but in reality, she's completely empty-headed. She can't even sweep a courtyard properly. I just smiled, offering no explanation. I do want to get into the inner courtyard, but absolutely not to be by Madame's side. Madame may look gentle and kind, but she has the mouth of a Buddha and the heart of a serpent. When she punishes servants, they either end up dead or crippled. In my past life, she was the one who had me beaten to death without even asking for the truth. I have other plans this time. Nanny Zhou lowered her voice and asked, "Don't tell me you want to serve the young duke. Every maid in this mansion dreams of serving young Duke Lianyu in the Jia Hall. He is strikingly handsome and elegant. Since he isn't married yet, becoming his bedchamber maid means rising to the top and becoming a mistress overnight. But the Grand Dowager and Madame guard him with extreme vigilance. Any maid who tries to seduce him is poisoned, mute, and sold off. It truly is a high-risk gamble for fortune." I once caught a glimpse of the young duke from afar. He was dressed in scarlet robes with narrow sleeves, with a purple gold crown adorning his hair. His face was so exquisite. He looked like someone stepped right out of a painting. But I'm just a blade of grass growing out of the dirt. Since ancient times, scholars have painted orchids, pines, and bamboo. Rarely does anyone ever paint grass.
He and I were never meant to belong in the same painting.
I spoke with earnest sincerity. "Manny, I know my place. I only want to keep my head down
And wait for my brother to take me home."
Nanny Zhou nodded in approval and said she would keep my allowance for this month for safekeeping, promising to give it back when I needed it. But I knew her greed was only growing. This was just her way of squeezing more money out of me. Still, I had no choice but to smile and agree. The wind howled fiercely that night. A bitter chill seeped through the paper-thin windows, making the chilblains on my hands throb with a sharp, stinging pain. It was already the 3rd watch, past midnight, but Yafeng still hadn't returned. Nanny Wu had forced him to review the ledgers, but there was no way he could make sense of them.
He would only end up rambling and making things up.
Once Nanny Wu is finished using him, his good days will be over. Those 3 tiles of snowflake silver and the new coins are the perfect incriminating evidence. Stealing from the inner treasury. That single charge alone is enough to seal Yanfeng's fate, but I can't let Yanfeng die. He is the only one who knows my brother's whereabouts. As the candle flame flickered, I remembered the day Huzi was knocked unconscious in the street by the slave trader. After that, Yanfeng and I were sold into the Duke's estate, and Huzi vanished without a trace. He was always so loyal and kind. On our journey, he would give every single bun he begged for to Yanfeng and me, while he starved until he was nothing but skin and bones. He only ate leftover scraps from the back alleys of restaurants. Now that we're apart, I only hope he is living a better life. I hope he fulfills his dream of becoming a great general. In these harsh and brutal times, revenge is a distant dream. Like dark clouds drifting high in the sky, they scatter piece by piece, never seemingly able to gather. All I pray the Buddha will watch over us,
So my brother, Huzi, and I can all survive.
and live to see the day we are finally reunited.
Wiping away my tears.
I grabbed the real ledger of Nanny Wu's that I had copied from memory, and knocked on Nanny Zhou's door. But that wasn't all. When I was helping Nanny Zhao organize the accounts, I noticed Nanny Wu had tampered with them as well. She had been pocketing half of the annual profits from Madame's dowry silk shop. It amounted to a staggering 10,000 tiles of silver. In the middle of the snowy night, Nanny Zhou took the ledgers and knocked on Madame's door. Upon reading them, Madame was so furious she smashed an entire set of precious white Rukil porcelain. Ungrateful backstabber. When have I ever treated her poorly?
How dare she betray me like this?
Not only did Nanny Wu steal money,
But she also stole Madam's private personal belongings, planning to sell them off. If word of this ever got out, Madam's reputation would be utterly ruined.
Outraged, Madam immediately ordered a search of Nanny Wu's room.
Sure enough, they uncovered the 2 ledgers along with the missing gold, silver, and jewelry.
Nanny Wu and her son were subjected to brutal torture,
While Nanny Zhou was handsomely rewarded for exposing their crimes. With Matron Zhao promoted to head of the inner courtyard's main kitchen,
I naturally got promoted to a second-class maid as well.
Matron Zhao was incredibly grateful that I didn't brag or take all the credit.
She asked me if there was anything I wanted.
I looked at her with pure sincerity and said,
My Shumbul accused Jianfeng of stealing silver.
and locked her in the woodshed to await her punishment. I understand the rules of the household. My sister did a terrible thing, and I won't beg for her mercy.
But since we're still flesh and blood, I just want to see her one last time.
Donald Zhao nodded repeatedly.
Praising my kindness and integrity. With her help, I made my way to the woodshed without any trouble.
After Matron Wu's downfall, the original order was to beat Yanfeng to death.
But by the middle of the night, nobody even mentioned the order anymore.
There wasn't even a guard left outside the woodshed. All I could hear was Yanfeng's hoarse, crying voice, screaming, "I didn't touch the silver!
Let me out!" I pushed the door open. Think
Afeng had 2 swollen red handprints on her face. Her eyes were swollen like walnuts from crying, and she was huddled in the firewood like a shivering quail. Gone was her usual smug arrogance.
I forced out a single tear.
And rushed forward in a panic. "Sister is here to save you. Thank you."
She cried, "Sister! Matron Wu insisted I stole from the inner treasury.
Silver! But today was my first time even entering the inner courtyard. I didn't steal it. She wants to beat me to death.
Can't you just say the silver is yours?
I mean, it was yours in the first place.
I don't want to die.
So, she actually knew that stealing would get her beaten to death. Then, in my past life, when she forced that South Sea pearl from the golden hairpin into my hands, she had already marked me for death.
What a wonderful blood-related sister.
The biting winter wind howled,
And my heart froze as cold and hard as ice at the bottom of a well.
incapable of feeling a single shred of warmth again.
Matron Zhou is newly appointed, and there are plenty of eyes watching her every move.
Who would dare to even dream of such a thing?
But Nanny Ruin, the old matriarch's trusted personal maid, has a birthday coming up. Every manager and steward in the estate is sending her gifts. Nanny Ruin loves jade more than anything. If someone could gift her a fine piece of jade,
They'd win her favor in a heartbeat. But sadly, we sisters are dirt poor.
we can't even afford to butter her up.
Enfeo's ears immediately perked up.
Her eyes filled with hesitation and suspicion. So, I decided to pour more fuel on the fire. Choking back tears, I said, "The young lord is choosing personal maids after the new year. Your godmother is planning to send your godsister instead."
Ying'er, you have such a blessed destiny.
You're the one who should go. But trapped here in this woodshed, who knows when they'll beat you to death? In the same kind,
How can you even think about a prosperous future?
Yanfeng gritted her teeth.
finally made up her mind. Underneath the second orchid pot in the greenhouse, if you dig down, there's a small box.
Inside is the heirloom jade pendant grandmother gave me. Sister, take it to Nanny Zhou
And ask her to let me out. As a light snow fell, I carried a lantern to the greenhouse. Digging up the soil,
I indeed found that small mahogany box.
opening it up.
Inside was the very jade pendant I'd been dreaming of day and night.
The character Yang engraved on it was clearly visible. Holding the jade pendant, I wept softly for a moment, since Yanfeng refused to reveal my brother's whereabouts. I will use this jade pendant to search for him myself. I will find him one day.
I restored the greenhouse to how it was.
And was just about to leave when the crunching sound of boots stepping on snow came from outside, along with a young man's gentle voice. "Who's there?" It was the young lord, Lang Yu, a man and a woman alone in the dead of night.
If word gets out, I'm ruined. I bent down.
And shuffled my way out, step by step, hiding behind the flower pots. The conservatory was filled with the cold light of the snowy moon.
He wore that priceless gold-threaded peacock robe.
The faint golden light shimmered softly around him, making him look like an exquisite statue carved from pure jade. Fortunately, I was hidden behind the lush plants and flowers, so he didn't get a clear look at me. Long after that night, he actually told me that seeing me with the orchids that night, under the glow of the white silk lantern in the light snow, made me look like a flower spirit. Breathtakingly beautiful. Almost otherworldly. But I have no desire to be a mere ornament in anyone's life. Not even someone as noble and powerful as him. I have a culprit to find, and a vengeance to claim. My path goes far beyond this inner court. Once I got my hands on the jade pendant, I didn't beg Nanny Zhou to spare Enfeng.
Nanny Zhou was more than happy to do me a favor.
Putting on a big show, but letting her off with a light punishment. By banishing Yanfeng back to the outer courtyard. Back to being a lowly maid. Yanfeng's life became a living hell from that moment on. Before, she used her status as a third-class maid to bully everyone else. But now that she has fallen,
The people she once tormented are naturally eager for payback.
they pour water all over her bedding.
turning it into a solid block of ice in the freezing dead of winter.
They never leave any food for her.
Leaving her with nothing but leftover slop from the bucket for every meal.
Vicious insults to her face have become a daily routine.
Even her snobbish godmother saved her last bit of savings and her only winter coat before running off.
It didn't take long for Yanfeng to fall gravely ill when she suddenly came begging to see me. I simply made up excuses about being busy and turned her away.
Oh, this is just the beginning, Yanfeng.
You have a whole lot more suffering waiting for you.
So, make sure you savor every single bite. Before, when I poured my heart out to you, you couldn't care less.
You had to be utterly crushed by life before you finally learned to bow your head.
Sometimes, when I ran into the old nannies from the outer courtyard under the corridors, I would slip a handful of copper coins into their hands
And say with a sweet smile, "Thank you so much, ladies, for taking such good care of Yanfeng. She has a bit of a temper, so she really needs some tempering.
I know you are all just doing this to help her grow.
Take this money to buy some wine to warm yourselves this winter.
They understood my meaning perfectly.
And became even more attentive and caring for Yanfeng.
In the blink of an eye, the end of the year was upon us. The eldest young lady of the Duke's estate had just been made consort D in the palace. Her favor was like flowers in full bloom.
Her glory was at its absolute peak.
A constant stream of visitors bearing gifts practically wore down our threshold. Large and small banquets were held one after another, and money was spent like water. The madam ordered all the maids and servants' monthly allowances to be cut in half. The masters still lived in absolute luxury, drinking and feasting as usual.
Nanny Joe, who managed the main kitchen, was running around like a headless chicken.
The patriarch wanted to order some special dishes,
And fearing the younger servants wouldn't convey the message clearly,
Nanny Joe sent me to handle it. She even tucked a delicate yellow velvet flower into my hair, saying,
you're dressed way too plainly.
"The patriarch likes lively and pretty girls." Wearing a polite smile, I walked into the parlor. The patriarch had a head of silver hair, but she was hale and hearty, laughing and bantering with her grandchildren. Seeing how pretty I was, and that I knew how to write, she immediately had her head maid look into my character.
But the madam merely cast a cold, indifferent glance at me.
And said pointedly, "Dishes are better when they are light and simple. And people look better when they are plain and modest too." In her eyes.
Any pretty maid was just a temptress trying to seduce her son.
I meekly accepted her words.
And used a charcoal pencil to write down each master's order.
When I walked up to the young duke, a heavy gaze fell upon me. Feeling almost tangible, a flicker of awe flashed in his amorous, peach blossom eyes.
He said softly, I'd like to order some dishes made with orchids.
"So please tell the kitchen to take extra care with them. Perhaps you can read some strange tales to find some inspiration." My heart tightened instantly. The incident in the flower room that night. He had recognized me. He chuckled softly, slowly shifting his gaze from my face
To sweep over my chest and waist.
There was no affection in his eyes.
Only the appreciative admiration for a beautiful object.
It was as if I weren't even a human being to him, but merely a pretty clay doll. I didn't even glance his way. Yet, I could still feel Madame's disgusted gaze on me, as if she were staring at a filthy blowfly. Her eyes were boring a hole right into my back. Once I finished taking orders from all the young ladies,
I was about to head out when I noticed someone in the side parlor. A young lady was sitting there, boiling water for tea.
she wasn't wearing a maid's uniform, yet her clothes were incredibly simple. Her pitch black hair was held in place by nothing but a single silver hairpin. She had a quiet, serene elegance about her. This was Miss Bai Shu of the Bai family. Her father had once saved the Duke's life on the battlefield, and in return, the Duke promised she would marry the young Duke as his primary wife. But the Bai family later fell in hard times. Her father went missing on the battlefield, his fate unknown. So, the Duke's estate went back on their word. They declared she could only enter the family as a lowly concubine, treated even worse than a top-tier maid. In my past life, when I was being beaten to death, she was the only one who spoke up. At least find out the truth before you beat her. A human life is at stake.
Even though the head nanny quickly dragged her away.
I never forgot her kindness. I walked over to her and asked softly, "Miss Bai, is there anything special you'd like to eat?"
The kitchen is preparing the New Year's Eve feast. She lifted the kettle,
Boiling spring water from Mount Yuquan. This was originally the job of Nong Chin, the head maid, but she had lazily dumped the chore onto Bai Shu. "I'll just eat whatever the household is having," she replied softly. "You're from Liaodong, aren't you?" I haven't seen the heavy snow of Liaodong in 2 years. When the New Year's Eve dinner was served, I made sure to bring out several Liaodong dishes. Sweet red bean puffs, chicken stew with hazel mushrooms,
Buns filled with dried green beans and tofu skin.
and crispy sweet and sour pork. The Dowager Duchess thoroughly enjoyed her meal and casually offered a few words of praise. But the other masters of the Duke's estate chimed in, their words dripping with contempt for Liaodong. The young Duke cracked a joke, making the Dowager Duchess burst into laughter. She gave him all the red envelopes on the plate. What a lively scene. This was another family's New Year reunion. I stood there in the corner, my nose stinging with tears as I thought of my own home. Our family was poor, but every New Year, we'd still scrape together enough to buy a cut of meat and make a big batch of plump, white dumplings.
We'd hide copper coins inside them.
Whoever bit into one would burst out giggling. My parents would hand out red envelopes, and my older brother would always give his to me,
Poking at my braids and calling me a little troublemaker.
under the glowing red lanterns. As a light snow drifted down, though our small farming family was as insignificant as weeds, we still had our own share of warmth and joy. But now, my parents are long gone. There's no news from my older brother.
And then I'm left completely lost, like a single leaf of drifting duckweed, tossed around in this massive cold mansion.
Bai Shu's secret quiet the whole time.
He picked up a bite of dried green beans with his chopsticks.
Chewing slowly, bit by bit, as if tasting the seasons of his lost home. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red, and he gave me a look filled with deep gratitude.
After that day, Shisu and I started visiting each other often. I'd bring over fresh pastries,
And he'd root a pot of hot tea.
amidst the rising steam. We'd talk about everything under the sun. He was beautiful,
Like a tree in the north.
even when in bloom. He possessed a tough, unyielding strength, completely free of any cheap, seductive charm.
That's why the young master didn't like him.
After the new year, Yanfeng sent someone to find me again, saying he was terribly ill and wanted to see me one last time.
I wound my way to that abandoned courtyard in the outer manor as the freezing north wind howled,
Shriving the paper on the windows. Yanfeng was lying on a dilapidated brick bed,
his face blackened by the soot of a coal fire.
reduced to nothing but a bag of bones. Her hands were completely covered in oozing, spabbed-over chilblains.
Sister, save me.
Our godmother ran off with all my money.
She refused to pay for a doctor or medicine. She even snatched away the things you burned for me. She sobbed hysterically, but there was a desperate, vicious gleam in her eyes.
I calmly pulled my hand away.
And used a handkerchief to wipe the black soot off my fingers. It's the new year. I look like you did.
And the master's household doesn't allow servants to call for doctors or medicine.
They think it brings bad luck.
I brewed some brown sugar ginger tea.
Drink this first to ward off the chill. Yanfeng croosed under her breath as she gulped down the ginger tea.
She stared at my thick, clean, green cotton coat, her eyes overflowing with envy and malice.
Sister, you're living the high life in the inner courtyard, looking so prestigious. How can you bear to let your own sister freeze out here? Aren't you afraid our dead grandparents will crawl out of their graves to haunt you? Your sister is powerless. I only do menial errands in the inner courtyard. But you, Anne, once you get better, you might be able to secure a prosperous future for yourself. Look at the other courtyards. Several of those young maids fell gravely ill this winter, and they only recovered because their successful brothers spent money and did everything they could to help.
What can a mere woman like me do?
Yanfeng's eyes flickered.
She muttered, "We don't have any family," while they all have brothers to pay for their help.
She grit her teeth.
A calculating look flashing across her eyes. I draped a coarse red cotton coat over her shoulders, its cuffs bordered with silver thread, and said, "Once the inner courtyard starts recruiting maids, I'll find a way to get you transferred in,"
Yanfeng spat on the ground.
and cursed at me for being heartless. But after I left, she indeed made her move. A few days later, the young maids in the outer courtyard were gossiping, saying that Yanfeng had asked the outer gate manager, Hu Er, to write a letter for her. It was sent to her eldest brother, who was a centurion in Huilai town, Liadong.
She claimed her big brother loved her the most,
And once he knew she was sick, he would definitely send money right away. At the words Huilai town in Liaodong, my heart began to thud wildly, and my breathing grew shallow and rapid. So, my brother is in Liaodong after all. I look up toward the north. Under the deep, dark sky, a cold, quiet rain begins to fall. It feels as though this wind could sweep past the capital, over the snowy pine forests, and blow all the way to Liaodong. Shisu told me that right now, Liaodong is still buried in heavy snow. Snow so deep it can swallow a man's boots. Is my brother... is he doing okay? Are his hands still covered in painful frostbite? When it drinks to stay warm. Is his face still sunburned and red? My tears just won't stop falling.
they blur the words of the 1,000-character classic I'm copying for Little Stone.
Little Stone is Nanny Joe's grandson. He is only 7 or 8 years old. Such a chubby, adorable little boy. He always clings to me. Right now, he is puffing out his little cheeks, gently blowing on the wet tear stains on the rice paper, and then blowing softly on my cheeks.
Look, sister, the wind blew your tears away. Hearing this, Nanny Joe looks at me with a heavy, pained expression. She turns to him and whispers, "From now on, you must do everything your sister Ying'er tells you." I know. She is entrusting her. I toss and turn all night, unable to sleep. So I slip away to the abandoned shrine to burn some incense for my late parents.
Shisu said that during the winter, the invaders in Liaodong fight even more savagely. Her own father went missing after getting trapped in a blizzard.
I kneel and bow before the Bodhisattva,
begging the heavens to keep my brother safe and sound. Buddha, please. I am willing to give up years of my own life in exchange for his safety. I have never done a single bad deed in my entire life. But then, the madam forced Nanny Joe to run her illegal loan sharking business.
She promised that if I did it, she would free my family from slavery.
But if I refused, She threatened to send Little Stone into the palace to be castrated as a eunuch. I had absolutely no choice. Let me bear the sin and the curse of ruining lives all by myself. Hearing this, my entire body went cold. Lending usury to bleed the poor dry, charging interest rates over 100 times the loan.
Families who couldn't pay were forced to sell their own children, leaving them completely ruined, with lives lost.
In our own village, Huang Ying'er village, there was a family who couldn't pay back their debt. They were brutally tortured and had their hearts ripped out by local thugs.
My grandfather led our entire clan to rescue that family's 2 surviving children.
He strictly warned the villagers never, ever to touch high-interest loans. But not long after,
Our entire village was brutally massacred. Our village was located in Pingyang Prefecture.
it was a place where the Imperial Army stored their massive grain reserves. Bandits had never dared to raid there.
And my father was the most famous hunter for miles around.
And we had never run into bandits before.
Looking back now, I'm afraid what happened to 2 village back then is directly tied to those wealthy elites running the illegal loan sharking ring.
Nanny Joe admitted that she killed someone. Could the one who slaughtered my entire family also be the madam? The next day, Lady Wang saw Nanny Joe. She was dressed in increasingly lavish clothes.
He claimed the madam had rewarded her with exquisite silk.
And even brought little Shitu into the courtyard to live with her permanently. Everyone praised the madam for her kindness. But even the finest silk couldn't hide her exhaustion. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her eyes were filled with desperate pleading. You're smart and attentive. Look after little Shitu for me. Keep him away from the water. Don't let him go anywhere isolated. Just make sure he stays where everyone can see him.
Don't worry, Auntie.
You're busy with your duties. I'll keep little Shitu right by my side. I won't let him out of my sight for even a second. Once the hunt is over, the hounds are slaughtered. When the birds are gone, the bow is cast aside. Nanny Wu used to help the madam run her illegal loan sharking ring, only to be disposed of by the madam under some made-up pretext in the end. Nanny Zhong is currently the madam's trusted confidant, but once she outlives her usefulness, she'll suffer the exact same fate as Nanny Wu.
I've seen those real and fake ledgers.
My name is already on the madam's hit list. Once Nanny Zhong is dead, the madam will never let me live. I must climb higher. I have to survive. During the New Year's Eve dinner, the matriarch expressed interest in having me serve by her side. But months have passed, and there has been no word.
I need to go find Nanqing and ask her about it. The matriarch's handmaidens carry a lot of influence.
The matriarch is fiercely protective of her own. Only by getting close to her can I temporarily escape the madam's deadly clutches. I went to find Nanqing with some sweet osmanthus glutinous rice cakes I made myself. I took out a few sachets embroidered with the 5 poisonous creatures. They were filled with mugwort, incense, and ashes from burned Buddhist scriptures. This was exactly what the matriarch had ordered Nanqing to make. She really is a beautiful girl.
No wonder the masters all like her.
You're very fortunate. The young lord has set his eyes on you. He asked the matriarch to have you transferred to his quarters. But you'll have to wait until the Grand Secretary Lin's eldest daughter marries into the family before you can officially become his bedchamber maid. My heart instantly plunged into a freezing abyss. The young lord's affection is nothing but a death sentence.
Once, a maid received just a single extra glance from him, and Madame forced a bowl of poison,
causing her to break out in oozing sores and rot to death.
Nanqing sighed,
telling me her own sister was once praised by the young lord as a natural beauty. The very next day, Madame summoned her back. On the way, she slipped into a pond and drowned. She also warned me the young lord's headmaid, Shiwu, is ruthless and cold-blooded. She once framed a maid for shattering a jade Rui scepter, and Madame had the girl beaten to death. Besides, the blue pearl on the imperial bestowed peacock gold cloak was firmly secured by multiple layers of gold thread. There was no way it could have just fallen off. In my past life, I was framed for stealing that very blue pearl. It must have been Xiu and Yanfeng working together to destroy me. Nanqing couldn't bear to see me suffer, so she promised to speak highly of me in front of the matriarch. Bai Shushu spoke up for me too, telling her that I was exceptionally kind-hearted,
Had been tirelessly caring for my sick younger sister.
and was skilled at transcribing Buddhist scriptures. The patriarch decided right then and there to let me serve in her own courtyard. I finally let out a silent sigh of relief. I went to the main kitchen to hand over my duties to Nanny Joe, but Little Stone kept pestering me to go feed the cat. So, I carried a few fried yellow crackers and took him to the bushes to find Dabai. Dabai is a white stray cat. He wears a small golden lotus pod pendant around his neck and is incredibly attached to me. Ying'er. So you're the one who's been taking such good care of my Tishi. Your taste is just like mine. Liking Ying'er as well. Since Tashia likes you so much, why is she so afraid of me? There isn't a single girl in this estate who doesn't like me. Yet she doesn't. How amusing. I quickly pulled Little Stone along, curtsied, and excused myself, not daring to linger for even a second. The way he looked at me was like admiring a piece of fine porcelain, filled with appreciation, but absolutely devoid of respect. To me, his presence was nothing short of a terrifying monster. The moment I realized Dabai was the young lord's cat,
I never went to feed him again.
Little Stone had been upset for days. I had to make him a little stuffed kitten just to cheer him up.
久莫忙，我们回咽口避血而避血。
I hadn't seen him in a very long time.
All I got from him was a pouch of silver sent through a messenger. The only good news was, Bai Kyusu's father had actually returned from the battlefield alive.
He even brought back the enemy's military defense map, securing a massive victory. He was appointed as the general of pacifying the north, taking command of hundreds of thousands of troops in Liaodong. Instantly, the Duke's estate made a complete 180-degree turn in their attitude.
The dowager stopped making Shusu brew tea, and the madam no longer mentioned making her a kneeling concubine.
Even the family's eldest miss in the imperial palace, who had been demoted to concubine, did
Send a messenger with a red and green mandarin duck jade pendant to play matchmaker for Shisu and the young duke.
Compared to those parasitic, useless officials in the imperial court, the Bai family are indeed true heroes.
Shosu told me the young duke isn't a bad person.
Just a useless man. In her eyes, there was the white snow in the vast forest of Liaodong. Ying'er.
Do you want to go to Liaodong with me? In my father's letter, he mentioned a young general surnamed Huang. I wonder if he could be your brother.
That night, the wind was exceptionally gentle.
Carrying the sweet scent of jasmine, I held that letter and cried the entire night. That one name. It made all my waiting and suffering worthwhile. When I carried my little bundle and stepped into the main parlor,
A girl deliberately brushed past and bumped right into me. She had thin willow leaf eyebrows,
narrow eyes,
and thin lips painted with heavy rouge.
she smiled gently, but her eyes were filled with pure malice, cold as shards of broken glass. This was Xie. With a fake smile, she ordered her maid to feed the cat, and then said pointedly, "Some people love to play hard to get. But they'd better watch out, or they might just trip themselves up." I completely ignored her provocation. She wanted to become a concubine.
There was nothing for me to compete with her over.
In this world, the paths left for women are already so few. But she used other people's lives as stepping stones to climb her way up. The walls she built for herself were cemented with their blood and flesh.
That was the truly despicable part. Little Stone clung tightly to my side,
Spreading his little arms to shield me, Xia just cast a cold, dismissive glance at him,
threatening that Lady Diping was running short of little eunuchs by her side.
and that a 7 or 8-year-old boy would be the perfect fit. I grabbed Little Stone and marched straight into the main room, without looking back. It wasn't long before Yanfang got herself into trouble again. Steward Hu, the outer gate manager, had grown tired of playing around with her.
And his fierce, hot-tempered wife came pounding on our door, screaming that she was going to sell Yanfeng off to the illegal coal mines.
Terrified, Yanfeng sneaked into the inner courtyard and blocked my path, claiming our brother had sent a letter. She wanted me to go with her to the second gate of the outer courtyard. I knew exactly what she was up to. She wanted to use me as her scapegoat to make Steward Hu's wife think I was the vixen who seduced her husband. Fine. I'll go with you. Yafo dragged me along as we stumbled into the outer courtyard. The main gate was left ajar. Steward Hu's wife was standing there, brandishing a gleaming blade and screaming curses, while clutching the bright pink jacket I had gifted to Yanfeng. Catching me off guard, Yanfeng shoved me forward, crying out, "Sister, why is your jacket over there? Why has she been rummaging through your things?" Her voice was dripping with feigned innocence and shock. Remind, exactly the same act she pulled in my past life when she framed me for stealing the master's meals. Steward Hu's wife lunged forward with the knife, her eyes viciously locked on my face, ready to slash it. I quickly dodged behind the door. "Sister Hu, wait! That jacket isn't mine." "Look inside. There is a name embroidered on it. My sister Yanfeng's childhood name just happens to Thinger. In fact, I only came today to thank Steward Hu for taking such good care of my little sister. This bag of silver is my thank you gift." Steward Hu's wife snatched the silk and ripped open the pink jacket to check. Sure enough, the name Feng was embroidered right there on the lining.
Meanwhile, the jade plaque hanging from my waist clearly bore the name Yingzi. Yangfeng.
Being completely illiterate, she thought she could fool everyone. She had no idea I was 10 steps ahead of her. Flying into a violent rage, Steward Hu's wife lunged at Yanfeng and grabbed her by the hair. The two of them rolled on the ground, clawing and screaming in a wild fistfight. A crowd began to gather, whispering and watching the spectacle. Suddenly, the knife was kicked right to my feet. The blade gleamed under the light. The blade is razor sharp. Carved on the hilt is a bashang flower motif. In an instant, all the blood rushed to my head.
The Bashan flower. This is the very weapon used to slaughter my entire family.
It is identical to the blade Hu Zi pulled out of the killer all those years ago.
Bai Shuqiu told me that this Bashang flower is the crest of the Madame's family.
The Wangs are a powerful clan who have ruled Ping'an Presture for a century.
They control the local garrison.
In recent years, banditry frequently broke out in Ping'an Prefecture,
And the Wan family's sons repeatedly won glory for crushing them. But in truth, they were slaughtering innocent civilians to claim military credit. The Madame's predatory high-interest lending had forced the villagers into a corner.
So she sent the Wang family troops to massacre the villages.
this not only covered up their crimes,
but also earned them military merits.
That is exactly how my home, the Huang family village, was wiped out.
What a hypocrite Madam is. Preaching mercy while harboring a serpent's heart.
What a brilliant and decorated Wan family.
I bit my lips so hard it almost bled.
A wave of overwhelming hatred threatening to drown me.
Since Yefeng's reputation was completely ruined,
The Mav ordered her to be dealt with. She was stuffed into a burlap sack,
beaten to death, blow by blow,
and then tossed into a mass grave.
I didn't feel a single shred of pity for her. She brought this entirely on herself.
As autumn set in, Nanny Joe suddenly vanished like morning dew.
the madame claimed she had sent her to look after the old estate in Ping'an Prefecture,
So she could live out her days in peace.
But I knew better.
She had already been silenced by the madame and
Nanny Shou's entire family had vanished, leaving only little Shitu. One day, the boy handed me a small rosewood box, saying it contained the glass marbles his grandmother had left for him. I poured the marbles out
and found a hidden compartment at the bottom of the box.
Inside was a piece of paper covered in details of the madame's illegal predatory loans.
Her disregard for human life, her collusion with palace eunuchs, and her brutal persecution of other concubines.
It turned out Nanny Joe had known my true identity all along.
She didn't tell a soul.
Before she died, she chose to leave all this evidence to me and entrusted little Shitu to my care. I made a copy of the evidence and handed it over to Bai Shosu.
Second Miss Ning.
I hear you are highly skilled at needlework.
Once winter starts, the young duke will wear his peacock gold coat, but as luck would have it, hot ash burned a small hole in it.
See if you can help patch it up. It is that very peacock gold coat, the one that cost me my life. She wants to use the South Sea Pearl to frame me again. But I am not afraid anymore. I have already found my enemy. I have found my brother. My life is finally complete. Shisu said this is the perfect chance to sow the evidence of their crimes into the peacock gold coat. When the young duke wears it to the imperial palace, her father has already arranged for a contact eunuch inside to present the evidence directly to the emperor. The duke's estate has long abused the emperor's favor, monopolized military power, and committed unspeakable evils. The emperor has been waiting to eradicate this cancer for a long time. On the day the fine snow began to fall again, the young duke, wearing the peacock gold coat I had patched, entered the palace with the old matriarch and the lady. Before leaving, his eyes lingered on me the entire time. He even coaxed the old matriarch to bestow me to him, making the old lady beam with joy. She immediately agreed to it. The lady's face darkened instantly. Once they left, she sent for me.
2 burly maidservants kicked my legs out from under me,
Pitting me roughly to the ground.
She stood to the side.
Fitting out my offenses with a sharp, venomous tongue.
Failing to keep your sister in line makes you disloyal. Stealing the South Sea Pearl from the peacock gold coat.
And showing utter disrespect by ruining an imperial gift.
Your crime is punishable by death. The lady nodded in approval, her Buddha-like face completely devoid of any warmth.
You insolent servant!
You should be beaten to death with clubs.
but our household has always been merciful.
We shall bestow upon you a strip of white silk.
Go end your own life.
Just then,
Bai Shushu rushed in.
as she lifted the curtain, a gust of icy wind and snow blew inside. With a face lit up with joy, she cried out,
My lady!
Lady de Plague is pregnant. Such a joyous day. She was so determined to punish the wicked servant.
Though she didn't even care if she endangered the precious baby in Depin's womb.
The madam went absolutely ecstatic.
She hurriedly threw on her cloak to head to the palace, ordering,
Sing, but keep me under strict house arrest until she returned to deal with me. Shiyu sneered viciously.
Don't get too smug. Once the madame returns, you won't live to see tomorrow's sun.
I closed my eyes, waiting in silence.
Light snow drifted down all day, leaving a thin layer of frost on the ground. By dusk, the carriages of the matriarch, the madame, and the young duke finally returned, but their faces were deathly pale with shock. Behind them came a massive, imposing escort of Jinui guards. The soldiers from the 5 cities commandery and the officers from the local magistrate's office swarmed the duke's estate like wolves. The evidence Nanny Joe sacrificed her life to leave behind had finally paid off. Today was a day of reckoning.
Both of their estates were raided and confiscated,
I will certainly live to see tomorrow's sun.
but the duke's estate never will.
Overnight,
The century-old Shunhei-duk estate crumbled into dust.
except for the matriarch, everyone was dragged off to the imperial prison to await trial.
As the genie we escorted Shusyu and me out of the mansion,
I held little Shidu's hand and walked past the bound members of the household. The madam glared at me with pure, venomous hatred.
it was you. I regret not getting rid of you 2 wretched things sooner.
Huang Ying'er, or especially you. A lowborn wretch like you should have died long ago.
I borrowed a genie we guard's scabbard and told her coldly, those who owe lives must pay with theirs.
Shia's face was covered in swollen slap marks.
She dragged her battered body to kneel in front of the young duke, trying to shield him from the freezing wind. But the young duke looked completely traumatized.
His eyes hollow and vacant.
He muttered to himself, how could this happen? Is this a dream? Later, the crimes of the ducal estate were announced to the world.
Their titles were stripped, their entire property confiscated, and their descendants for 3 generations were barred from the imperial examinations. The Duchess, Lady Wang, was convicted of murder and treating human lives like grass. She was sentenced to exile in Pingnang Prefecture, he all down, while the Wang family, for slaughtering innocent civilians to claim military credit,
A crime of extreme and heinous cruelty, had 3 generations of their family executed. To beg for a cup of warm wine for the young duke, Xiu flirted with the jailers.
the young duke uttered only a single word to her. Filthy.
That very night, Xiu hanged herself in her cell.
Before he died, he covered his face with his hair, terrified of scaring the little duke he cherished so deeply.
Xiu sighed, saying that he too was a pitiful soul.
I was reminded of Yan Feng, the male lead of the Peacock Cloak. Daddy Mu, Nanny Zhou, and the others have all received
Their well-deserved retribution. It must be my parents' spirits in heaven, watching over me.
Tears streamed down my face.
for the great revenge finally achieved at this very moment, and for the reunion that is now within our grasp.
叙述人来宽了一听，填了庭朝气手回去。
Inside, a warm, sweet fragrance greeted our senses.
Little Stone was playing with glass beads.
Shisu held the Capital Gazette, sharing the latest news with me.
I read my brother's letter over and over again.
As I turned to the next page, 2 lines of words caught my eye. My brother-in-law is cured. Looking forward to our reunion in Liaodong. We were originally just insignificant people, like wild grass on the roadside.
Destined for no great achievements.
But precisely because we are small and humble, we carry ourselves with reverence and respect,
Making us feel that everything between heaven and earth is warm and respectable.
Lovely, and worthy of love.
If people have love, even wild grass will grow with the wind and sprout wherever there is water.
growing in thick clumps and lush clusters, until at last, they can spark a wildfire that sweeps across the planet.